Alright, I'm going to force a video out today. csjoseph released a meme on his Facebook page talking about INTPs are the most introverted of the introverts. Now, I tend to agree with this. He used to say ISFJ, but he better clarify this on some future videos. Some other person says, oh, he just meant sensors. Well, that's kind of a weird little cop out, but that's kind of a given when it comes to sensors because, yeah, they're going to be the most introverted of the four, which I will get down to. So typically speaking, the people who are the most introverted are going to be your background control, responsive, informative types. These are your ISFJ, ISFP, INTP, INFP. But why would you conclude to the INTP being the most introverted of all the types? Well, because you look at their ego of what the kind of person they are. This tends to be this way, especially when they're young. Now, if you look at healthier INTPs such as Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jordan Peterson, things like these are guys that are constantly giving speeches on a regular basis. And so these types, especially when they get above 40, start to show more signs of their ESFJ side of their mind. If they're in a leadership role, which they can find themselves in because, they typically invent things in different ways like this and not the program they have to instruct anyways. And so they're probably developing their ENTJ side if they're a business INTP to begin with. But if you look at the four types of the background, control, informative types, all four are obviously responsive. But what would make these types be more shadowy and more, withdrawn from society? Well, if you look at ISFJ, ISFJs are affiliative and they're systematic. Okay, and so they're going to want to be part of the community in some way. They don't want to be in the in the spotlight. Needless to say, there are ISFJs who are actors and who are entertainers and such sort of things, but for the most part, no, they want to be in the background. They want to, have their family and their kids, and they want to do the right thing. And this typically means taking their kids to church, for instance, or taking them to some kind of camp, taking them to something, whatever their culture is, where they live, which is the standard for how you're supposed to raise your children, okay? And so they think, well, I'm a good mother or I'm a good father if I'm involved with my student, my son or my daughter's education, for instance. And so you'll find ISFJs who get involved with PTA meetings and things like that, who are more involved in the community because they're all about following that system of rule and law and how society sees people should be. So typically speaking, ISFJs are going to be your moms more or less, and they're going to be your soccer moms. They're worried about what may happen, and so they're going to get involved in the community in that sense. And so they're going to have to come out of their comfort zone and get involved in the community more because they're affiliative and they're systematic. So they'll be more scheduled on this sort of thing instead of not so spontaneous. You look at ISFP, they're interest and pragmatic. Now, granted, they can be very withdrawn types. I've known many ISFPs who just really want to make music all damn day. They're like a DJ. They're just making beats all the time. Boop, 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 boop. Or I've known ISFPs who are really like brew masters who just make beer all day long, and you really got to drag them out. But they have SE parent, and that high of an SE, the only of the four background types with SE and their ego, is the ISFP. And so this is a social, sensation. There's sensors in the social group dynamics. And so these guys, even though they might be withdrawn or quiet and responding, they still want to go to the bar. They still want to be invited. They still want to go to the the sports bar and talk about football, talk about sports, things like that. They still want to be involved in that kind of group dynamic in some sorts. Obviously, tons of ISFPs are involved in music and acting, and they do have that strong desire to, have a good reputation. And the interesting about ISFPs also is that typically will find a way to become leaders in some ways because of their ENTJ aspiration, because they want to be like that. And so this could be the case with them in their interests, and most likely it's usually in your best interest to socialize, to make connections for work, to, get in that group dynamic. They might find an interest in going to church, for instance, because, hey, they want to survive Armageddon, or they want to have an afterlife, or they want to have connections for their business or their music connections. They want to share their they want to get information from wherever they go, and so they also get involved in different community works and things like that. They also feel very strongly about a lot of things, and so they can be kind of like, I don't know, crazy, like social justice warriors in some ways. INTPs, however, are pragmatic and systematic, and they're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to follow a system. They don't have an affiliative side really, except when they get older, they might, start getting involved in their ESFJ side, and they understand more communal things. But for the most part, they're really like out, not part of this world, and they don't understand that affiliative nature. I can sympathize with this because I'm an ENTP, and I'm also triple systematic and don't really have an affiliative nature, directly in my ego. And so you might find some hard times, understanding where your place is in this world, because the world is so affiliative, as they are the majority. 40% SJs, 15% NFs, a gross number. So that's the majority of people. And and so when you have a type such as INTPs or ENTPs who don't have any interest, we don't really understand why people do things or why we should do things. So many times we have to be forced out to do things. And so if no one there to force the INTP, then more likely they will stay inside and be withdrawn. INFPs are interest based and triple affiliative. So they're all about the community. They're all about getting people to do the right and wrong thing and to make the world better, because they're future thinkers, and these guys are all about, improving the world and spreading messages. And they're also usually your teachers because of TE inferior. They want to get involved in the community. They want to go to different communal groups, things like that. They're going to be involved in their church. They want to teach and they want to share that message. Now, granted, they typically, freak out if they can't get their voice heard in some ways, because they have a lot to say. They're very brilliant types. And so, to go along with this, I think the most extroverted of these four, which is a funny thing to say, but the ISFP would be my go to, because it has SE parent, and the social group dynamics so important. They have a desire to perform. They have a desire for goals within child. They want to do things in an optimistic way. And speaking of optimistic functions, you think about the other three, they all have optimistic SI. What is optimistic and what is pessimistic? Well, you think of an optimistic function, people kind of go towards it without adherence. They don't have restrictions. They don't have like hesitation to do that. And so when you have SI hero and you're optimistically, oh, we got to look for what's comfortable, what are you going to do? You're going to withdraw. You're not going to force yourself out there, unless you feel it completely necessary to do what you should do. And so, yeah, the ISFJ, okay, do you want to go out in the community and meet new people and do all this kind of stuff, or do you want to stay home watching Netflix while eating bonbons? What do you think she's going to choose, or he's going to choose, for that matter? INFP also has SI child, optimistic child function of what's comfortable. So it's not shocking to find, I have an INFP sister, and I remember going to her house. She's much older than I am, and so her kids are the same age as me. And then so I just remember her like just disappearing, and like locking herself in a door, and like we're just like playing and stuff like that. Or like teenagers and things, or, go outside, mess around with fireworks or play ride bikes or whatever. And you just didn't see her forever. But, for the most part, she always wanted to get us involved in different things, and she would take us like different campsites, and she would organize different little things like that. And she wanted to get the kids together in a very communal way, because they're affiliative, triple affiliative at that. Just like the ISFJ is affiliative, wants to get kids to go play soccer, wants people to get into the community. While the INTP doesn't have that affiliative nature, they don't have an interest nature, and they have SI child. And so they're going to optimistically, without hesitation, choose what's comfortable to them. And so, unfortunately, at a very young age, this can mean hiding alone in the basement on video games. And or doing other things, reading fantasy novels is another big one. I know a lot of INTPs that seem to get lost in fantasy worlds. They love Robert Jordan, Tolkien books, things like that, Brandon Sanderson. And this can be an issue with them. This is why they need a very domineering type, such as the ENTJ, to drag them out of the basement, to drag them out, get them dressed, clean them up, things like that. ENTJ is very dominant figure, very the most alpha of the abstracts, at least, probably of all 16, in my opinion. And they're also, in some ways, more the kind of most extroverted because of TE Hero, wanting to find out, how the world thinks. And so this is why they kind of, benefit from that kind of thing. And so that's what I'm getting at. I think, yeah, INTP probably. However, if you want to get an INTP out of the basement, use guilt. They're susceptible to it. Granted, that's kind of mean, and hopefully you don't want to do it too much. But if you really are desperate, just like, hey, this INTP won't get the hell out of the house, and, it won't go do stuff, won't stop playing video games. Guilt is a really good thing to use for them. It's a motivator. I'm susceptible to guilt myself too. Um, you know, um, they definitely want other people to feel good. They care about what you want to do, and they kind of already think they have it figured out already, and that's kind of why they hesitate to do it again. They already think what's going to happen. They already know, and so they like to kind of use that as an excuse not to do anything. But in my MMORPG experience in Final Fantasy 11, INTPs are kind of like doormats in the group and in the guilds, and you can always get them to help you with different quests and things like that. So yeah, you can get them out of the house. But that's my thoughts on the four background types and who's the most introverted.